You're fine.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Get you out of here in under an hour. Yeah, I'm hungry. Okay. This was a patient I saw.
Voice is on 10.
This is going to be very familiar when you take the lab part.
I'm sorry, what? Okay.
Very familiar when you take the lab.
Because I'm going to give you a picture very similar to this. It's going to have the whole vestibulocochlear apparatus here. And you should be able to move these parts.
Oh, you know what? Can we see the top?
One extra term is not listed here. The outside of the ear here is called the pinna. P-I-N-N-A. Okay. Then when everybody knows the external acoustic meatus, that's the name of the hole in the bone. Okay. When you put all the soft tissue in here and actually form the ear canal, it's called the external auditory canal. Okay, so there's a little difference between the two, semantically anyway. When you have air pressure waves that are guided into your canal, they're going to be pushing up against the eardrum, which we are now going to call the tympanic membrane. Okay? It's no longer the kneecap, it's the patella, right? Okay? So tympanic membrane is the eardrum. This is going to vibrate, and through a little system of levers here with these three bones, the smallest bones in your body called the ossicles, they are going to transmit that vibration over here to this bone, and it's going to bump up against a membrane here that's flexible. So these bones have names. They each have two names, actually. The malleus, the incus, and the stapes, okay, or the hammer, the anvil, and the stirrup. Okay. They are going to vibrate against this little window here called the oval window because it's longer than it is wide. Right? And that's going to push fluid now because this is all air in here. Okay? But now the vibration is going to be transmitted to fluid inside the cochlea here. So when this window moves in and out, it's pushing fluid now. Okay, so it's a hydraulic force. And because you can't compress fluids very well, you have to have a way, if you push on a fluid one side, you have to have a way for it to go somewhere. And that's what this other window is right here. Okay, so when that pushes in, this one will bulge out. Okay, and they just go back and forth like that. Okay, so that's where you get the vibratory force that goes up in the cochlea and travels around through the different tubes there to give us our sense of hearing. And we'll look at that structure coming up. The pink area here is called the middle ear. Okay. The rest of this apparatus here is the inner ear. This is the external ear. Okay. The middle ear is full of air, like I said. When this vibrates, you don't really want to compress air either, so usually you have an opening that can equalize the pressure inside the middle ear. That's your eustachian tube. Okay? That's the tube that empties out just back by your tonsils and your adenoids there. When that gets blocked, the cells that line this, the squamous cells that line this cavity, will absorb the air and it will create a vacuum, okay, which pulls in the eardrum a little bit and gives you that sensation like you're in a tunnel, like that. You can't hear very well. The same sensation you get if this fills up with fluid from an infection. Viruses, bacteria, they get fluid inside here, and they can actually cause the eardrum to bulge out if they're under pressure. Okay, so and I'll show you some pictures of that later. But that's the mechanism to get sound waves to fluid waves. Okay, and we'll talk about how that works. But this apparatus up here, this is where we get our sense of rotation. Okay, so when I turn my head, I sense that because the fluid in these canals are moving when I do that. The one that's lying flat is the one that's most sensitive when you turn your head sideways. Okay? The fluid has the most momentum. So when I turn my head up and down, that's the vertical one here. Okay? And then there's one that's sort of at an angle in the back. But the combination of the fluid movement inside these things, your brain interprets that you're moving in in certain directions. Okay, that's how that's how that works. Now the names. This is called the vestibular apparatus. Okay? One of these little coils here is called a semicircular canal. And you don't have to remember specific names, just remember this is a semicircular canal. All of them here are. You'll see a little swelling on there, on each one has a little swelling called an ampulla, but and I'll show you why that's there in a second. But the nerves that come out of the vestibular apparatus, that's the vestibular nerve. The cochlear nerve here is from the cochlea, this here, comes from the same root as conch, meaning shell, okay, cochlea. It looks like a snail. Okay? That's the cochlear nerve. That's going to be the vestibular cochlear nerve going out the internal acoustic meatus. Coming in is the facial nerve. And that's why it runs right by your ear and then runs out down below the ear by the mastoid, which is why you can get Bell's palsy with ear infections, okay? Because the nerve is so close. Okay? So just sort of look at this as your word list now. I'm going to print it out, okay? But you're going to see a picture just like this on the phone. Okay? You're going to have to name a few of these things.
And number 13, you called it something different. You called it the vestibular.
Which is, well, they're specifying here. I didn't see the structure, so I didn't point to
Yeah,
it. But
that's okay.
there are two structures here called the utricle and the sacule.
Okay.
And what they do is give you your sense of acceleration. Okay, they're built a little differently than the semicircular canal receptors. Okay, and it's coming up right here. Might as well go to this and go back to those muscles. The crista is the sensory organ that's in that little swelling on the semicircular canal. It looks like a little lump of cells. These are extensions of the cell. These have membrane proteins in here that are sensitive to motion. So when you bend them, you actually open the canal. That's how you fire it. It's not voltage, it's not chemically, it's actually a mechanoreceptor. Okay? So when you bend the protein, it opens, and calcium comes in, this time not sodium, calcium, positive charge. That's what depolarizes the cell. So then, from then on, that's like a regular nerve, transmission and action potential. So, right on top of those cells, there's a little glob of mucus-type material here called the cupula. Okay, you know, just like the dome on a church is called the cupula. Well, that's what it means, dome. Okay, so this is the crista. This is the cupula. Okay? The fluid in the canal, when you turn your head, the fluid is going to move past this and cause this to bend, and that's what's going to make it fire. Okay, so there's fluid out here in this red space.
And what's the pupil?
Just this mucus cap.
Mucus.
Yeah, this cap on top here. It just helps the cells become more sensitive because it's like putting on a sail, okay? And so this thing is going to move more readily with the fluid. Now, the macula and the sacule here, they're arranged a little different. They don't have little lumps of cells. They actually have sort of a plane of cells, a little carpet, okay? And they're lined up all pretty evenly like this. They have a mucus membrane around them as well. And then on top, there's a sprinkling of calcium carbonate granules, which actually gives it more momentum when you move. Everybody knows that, you know, when you accelerate forward, things want to go back, you know, like this, okay? So if I put a big heavy hat on and I accelerate, it's going to hold me back, right? So you're changing the momentum of this mucus when you put all that calcium carbonate on top of it, and you make it more sensitive, okay? So it's going to move more, you know, when you're accelerating. So if I'm going in this direction, okay, these cells are bending backwards, okay? And as long as I'm accelerating, as long as I'm going faster and faster and faster, I'm going to feel that, okay? But as soon as I come to a certain speed, even if it's 70 miles an hour in your car, as soon as you come to a constant speed, everything goes back to normal, okay? So it's only the acceleration or the deceleration that you feel, okay? And one of them, because they're arranged in different angles, one of them tends to be more vertical acceleration, like when you feel in an elevator, okay? And the other one is more sensitive when you're doing horizontal acceleration. Okay?
Like when you're playing?
In a plane, yeah, you're taking off. You're feeling that acceleration. But now you're flying at 450 miles an hour, and you don't feel a thing. Okay, so it's only the acceleration that you feel. Okay? Unless things go wrong. Okay, that's why your head can spin when you're not spinning. Okay, because these are going wrong. So that's called vertigo. Okay, so if you stimulate these abnormally, you'll be unsteady. And your head will be spinning. Okay? they think a lot of the reason for that, at least as of my reading, most recent reading, that sometimes, because these things are all in the same fluid, okay, that sometimes these things will break off and they'll come over here and play with the crista. And so you'll get abnormal head spinning. And that's why you can do exercises to try to dislodge those. Like they'll have you move your head in certain directions. And eventually they hope that you can knock that off and it'll stop bothering you.
Oh.
That's what the vertigo exercises are for.
Is this also for like, say when like your equilibrium's off or whatever?
That's exactly, that is your equilibrium.
Yeah.
This is how you have equilibrium. This has to work. Okay. So vertigo is a terrible sensation. And it's hooked into your nausea centers. Which is why it can make you, vomit if they're firing off bad.
What about like motion sickness when you're in a boat? Just like
Yeah,
going
same
back
thing.
and forth?
Same thing.
What about when you're drunk?
Same thing. You actually get ethanol in the fluid.
Up there?
Yeah. So it can throw you off. But it's also your cerebellum is highly sensitive to the ethanol too. So your coordination is off, your balance, the rim can be spinning, but the ethanol throws off the action potential.
Like throw up when you're moving.
Just about. They think that's an old protective sort of thing, the vomiting with when toxins got into the system, your body would, if it knew it was a toxin, okay, if it sensed the abnormal reactions, that would stimulate your nausea centers and your labyrinthine system. So that's why certain drugs and things will make you dizzy, okay? And that was supposed to be the body's warning that don't ever eat that again because it's poison, okay? Okay. So, all right, well, I think we can just go back a little bit right now. All right, inside the middle ear, there are two little muscles, okay? The tensor tympani muscle, that's cranial nerve 5, the trigeminal. Okay? That tenses up not only with loud noises trying to protect your eardrum, but it also tenses up when you eat. Remember, cranial nerve 5 gets the muscles of mastication, so your chewing doesn't quite bother you as much as it would, okay? Because the sound is not transmitted as well. Okay? Here's the smallest skeletal muscle in the body, the stapedius. Okay? It's innervated by cranial nerve 7, the facial nerve. This is also why when you get a Bell's palsy, if that is knocked out as well, that people say sounds feel too loud when they have a Bell's palsy. They don't like being around loud noises. Okay? So, but that's because 7 also gets that muscle. But both of these are firing, when you're in a disco and the thing is, 100 decibels and it's pounding in your chest, and that's trying to protect your ears. Because think about it, over the millions of years that our species have been developing, what's the loudest noise they ever heard?
Lightning?
Lightning, yeah, thunder. That's my guess anyway, or maybe a volcano that blew up, okay? But thunder was typically the loudest thing they ever heard, and you don't hear that a lot. So most of the world was pretty quiet, except for babies crying, maybe. And so our ears really didn't develop to handle loud noises, and that's why this is partially protected, but it's really not enough because we live in a society where loud noises are it's like pollution. Sirens, lawnmowers, and factory machines, and jet engines, and car engines, and all sorts of things. Our ears are just bombarded with a lot more noise than they were evolved to handle, which is why you get age-related sensory neural loss. Okay. So good enough for that. This is a picture of a crista. It's sort of dried up. This is a slide artifact here. This is the wall of the canal, but it's not supposed to be right on the figure. Okay. This should be out of the picture. Okay. But this is a crista. This is a cupula. That little mucous membrane on top of it there. You can almost see, these are the hair cells that are sensitive. You can almost see the axons start to form nerves down in here, okay, as it's sending a message into the vestibular nerve. Okay. So you might see this picture again.
Dr. Eriks, is that where you get earwax from those type of mucus? In that?
Sorry,
Is that where you get earwax
earwax?
from the mucus?
No. Go all the way back. You have sebaceous glands, just like you do on your skin, and wax glands. Sebum, it's forming actually in the skin here, so it builds up on the outside of the ear. Because right now we're talking inside of this apparatus here, so it would never get in there. Okay. But when you have to clean wax out of your ears, it's all an external ear problem right here. This is what the other utricle and sacral look like. They're more flat organs instead of a little bulbous thing like the crista. And here's those little carbonate crystals on top here. Okay. So, and these are arranged here and here, right? They're not going to be in the ampulla here. That's the semicircular canal. That's where the crista is. But the nerves are all connected. Okay. And the cochlear nerve forms the vestibulo-cochlear nerve, cranial nerve number 8. Mechanical receptors, just triggered by movement. Okay. Now let's go to the cochlea. Here's an old anatomy book drawing. This is one that I was looking at in Gray's Anatomy when I was studying in medical school. This is the kind of stuff it's a coil. So all these canals are connected to each other. Okay. These are not separate pieces. Okay. So you can see that organ, that membrane in the middle there. That actually goes all the way around. It goes all the way up the coil. Okay, so it doesn't stop. These are all connected. What it forms is a coil with fluid in it. Right? And you've got a membrane in the middle. And then when you hit that fluid, it's going to go in those canals and cause that membrane in the middle to vibrate. Depending on the frequency, it will vibrate in a certain place more than others. The high frequencies tend to be down in the bigger, lower ones. The lower frequencies tend to be sensed on the higher ones, okay? And so it's just like you take a rope and you shake it with a certain frequency, you're going to get resonance in the rope, okay? At a certain point, where the most resonance is, those nerves are telling the brain, this is the frequency you're hearing, okay? And then if you're hearing voices and lots of different frequencies, your brain has to sort all that out and recognize what it's hearing and make a picture of that hearing world. So in what direction it's coming from, depending on how fast it got to one ear versus the other, that's how you tell where sound's coming from. Okay? So your brain is pretty good at processing information like that. But this is where it comes from. Now we're going to learn the names of each of these different little structures here. Okay? So I'm going to blow it up. Here's one of them. It has 3 sections. This is part of another one. Okay? So just looking at this part right here. They call them rooms or scala, okay? The Latin word for room, scala. This is the scala vestibuli up here. Okay? You don't really have to do this because I've got it all labeled for you on the next slide. Okay? But here's the scala vestibuli, the scala media in the middle, okay? And the scala tympani down here on the bottom. And the fluid is going to be going in one side and out the other. So as it's vibrating, okay, it's going underneath the low tunnel and coming back the high tunnel. That's how it vibrates like that. So the fluid really isn't moving here in the scala media, but it's being vibrated by the 2 sides here. Okay, especially the basilar membrane here. This is where the organ of Corti is. This is the hearing apparatus that has the little hair cells, and this membrane right here will lay on top of them. And so when this membrane moves at all, it's going to rub those hair cells, and that's how you get signal to the brain that I just heard something. Okay, this membrane right here is a simple squamous membrane. It's not a thread, remember, it's a membrane running through the whole coil. Okay, so it's actually like a wall of cells. It's called the vestibular membrane or Reisner's membrane. This is the tectorial membrane. This is the basilar membrane down here. The actual hearing organ is called the organ of Corti, C-O-R-T-I. Okay. These cells around here, their main job is to keep the sodium, potassium, calcium levels just right so that these nerves can fire when they're moved. Okay. And here's the thing that's listed for you. So you'll see some sort of a picture. I'll probably use that one for the test. Okay, so you're going to have to label the parts and pieces. Don't worry about things like tunnel and outer hair cells, things like that. Just organ of Corti, basilar membrane, tectorial membrane, Reisner's membrane, and then scala tympani. That's what's on your surface. That's where you memorize it. Okay? And you can see, if this vibrates at all, these hair cells are going to fire, and then the nerves are all come together. This bipolar neuron comes down here, and the nerve body will be here, okay? The little ganglion, and then it sends a signal on into the cochlear nerve.
No, on the other slide, the Reisner membrane is this.
There's Reisner's.
Okay.
See, this is part of another system. This,
Okay.
this is another coil up here. Okay?
Where's
This,
Tectorial in there?
Right here.
Right there?
yeah, that forms the roof right over the hair cells.
Okay, and that little bump over here is the...
That's the organ of
daughters?
Corti.
Okay.
So the pictures never look quite the same. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But here's the organ of Corti, tectorial membrane. So that's riding on the hair cells. Now, this can also be, we're going to be talking about this on the lecture test as well. I mean, I could ask you, which membrane is the organ of Corti attached to? The basilar membrane, right? Okay. I give you three choices. Or the organ of Corti is located in what scala? Scala media? Yes. Okay. So those are lecture type questions. And in the lab, all you'll have to do is label. Okay. Come on. Here we go. Here's an actual picture, electron micrograph. It's been colorized to make it look pretty. Here's the hair cells of the organ of Corti. You can see the little hairs all lined up on the membrane there. This is the tectorial membrane. It should be laying down on top of them, but just the way this was cut, it obviously tore it up. So this is Reisner's membrane here. Okay. So the space out here would be the scala vestibuli. Scala media would be in here, and scala tympani down here. Okay. Now I'm going to blow this up and show you just this little area right here so you can see some of the hair cells and what they look like. Very high magnification here. But you see these things? That's what the tectorial membrane will be rubbing on as these things move. Okay, so it's the sound waves causing this whole thing to vibrate. The tectorial membrane is just going to be rubbing them and causing them to fire. So the brain interprets, depending on which ones are firing, your brain interprets that as a different frequency. Which is why it's pretty easy to make an ear better than ours. Okay, because all you have to do is make longer membranes, thinner membranes, make them more sensitive, and that's why dogs can hear higher frequencies than us, and bats can hear higher frequencies than us, and snakes can hear lower frequencies than us, and whales can hear lower frequencies than us. All you have to do is tweak the variables of the structure itself, and you'll get resonances more or less easily. Okay, so that's. But our ears are basically tuned to human speech, those frequencies. Okay? That's why we're, instinctually, we hear language and learn language. Okay? We don't have a choice because our brain interprets those kind of things. Think about being in a really loud commotion. You can almost always pick out a human voice if there is one. And no matter what's going on, you can hear human voices because your brain picks out those frequencies and concentrates them. Deafness, a lot of congenital deafness. The proteins, remember, these are membrane proteins. They're sensitive. You have a gene that's mutated. You don't make the right protein, you're deaf. Okay? So it's real simple to have these things go wrong. This is what, if I just blow up this area right here, just take one of these little groups right here and blow it up, you can see it has sort of an M shape to it. Okay, real pretty when it's colorized like that. And again, these are not hairs; these are actually membranes with proteins in the membrane. Okay. I've been trying to find some articles on exactly what the shorter ones are doing, and I think it's still kind of up in the air whether these are sort of inhibitory type receptors that might tone down louder noises, things like that. If the big ones are whacking around too strong, the little ones will kind of tone down the signal to the brain. That's the theory now anyway. Okay, but real pretty. But you'll notice these things look like they're connected, like a little fuzzy connection there. Well, they really are. Okay, those are proteins, transmembrane proteins that are going from one membrane to the other. And what they're doing is hooking up those, we'll call them hairs. Okay, it's like putting a string on a trap door on the other one. So when this one moves, it pulls the door open, and that depolarizes the cell. Okay, and the one next next to him is pulling his door open, okay? So, and you can see there are multiple doors all along the membrane, okay? So that movement is what's depolarizing the nerve. Okay?
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
What happens, I'm going to use me as an example, you know, driving the ambulance for years, I've got a little bit of deafness
Yeah.
because from the sirens itself.
Yeah.
What, am I damaging those?
Yeah,
Is
exactly.
that what's
You're knocking them out.
happened?
Yeah, you're damaging these membranes and and actually killing the cells that produce them. So, and that's normal with age. Okay, it's a sensory neural hearing loss. I've got a slide called presbycusis, that's what the term is. But with extra loud noises, you're going to knock these things out because they're pretty
Okay.
fragile. Like I said, we weren't evolved to handle loud noises. Okay, my dad was a jet pilot for 50 years. He's got to wear hearing aids now. He's around so many jet engines all the time. I used to see guys, that were in the Army, artillery people, boom, their hearing is gone. Okay. What were you saying?
Railroad people are a lot
Yeah,
of them are
loud noises like that. I mean, it's just unbelievable what we can do to our ears, which is why, the guys that are out mowing your yard, they're crazy if they're not wearing earplugs. Okay?
What about headphones listening to iPod?
That can be bad. If you're doing it all the time and you're doing it loud, or playing, the bass in your car at 100 decibels, if you're driving around, that's knocking these hair cells like crazy. Okay?
Is
Yeah.
it age that causes it when you hear loud noises? Your ears just hurt. Like if my husband's talking, he talks, he has a real deep voice. If he's talking and the TV's going at the same time, my ears just hurt. It's too much for me. Is that age?
Well, hard to say. I don't know. I think it's just being crazy.
Okay. That explains a lot.
Yeah. Well, certain sounds certainly bother people.
Okay.
My wife complains about certain frequencies.
Yeah.
She's involved in music all the time as a dance instructor and director. So there are certain frequencies, though, that will get her, and she says it's almost painful.
It is.
And I've never kind of experienced that, so I can't relate to it. But,
Maybe it's just a crazy woman thing.
yeah.
Honey, I just told you.
Well, that's a good question. That's the kind of thing I need to do with my homework on. Find answers like that.
Okay.
Thank you. So, all right. So now let's just do some definitional stuff here. When you talk about sound in the range where humans can hear it, it's called the sonic or audio range. Okay. If it's higher than 20,000 hertz, 20,000 hertz. Hertz means cycles per second. So that's vibrations per second of the airwaves. Okay, 20,000 is pretty high. You'll hear it a little bit here. Well, actually, probably none of us can hear 20,000 anymore. Okay. You have to be pretty young to actually hear all the high frequencies like this. But we can hear down to about 20. Some can, some 40 to 60 in that range. Okay. But that's a pretty low frequency. That's a real low, that's a real low buzz. And 20,000 that's extremely high whining frequency. We'll do a little hearing testing. Everybody in the room can see where their hearing drops off. But if we go above 20, that's called ultrasonic. If you go above, 20,000. If you go below 20, that's called subsonic sound. Okay. And obviously there are animals that can hear above us. They can hear in the ultrasonic range, and animals that can hear below us in subsonic range. The typical dog whistle. You blow the whistle, no human can hear it, but the dog perk up. They can hear that frequency. Okay. How many of you have heard about the app you can get on your phone? If you're a teenager, you can get it like an 18,000 hertz on your phone ringer, so that your teacher can't hear it, because there's no 30-year-old that can hear 18,000.
I've heard about it in the news.
So that the phone can
I
ring,
saw that on a
teacher won't
TV
hear
show
it.
once.
The funny thing about sound of it is like sometimes you,
So
like
right.
alarm clock, for example, if I'm using the same sound, I know what, but if you give me even the slightest different noise, I'm like, hey.
Exactly right.
Or like, I work at a bank, I'm a manager at a bank, and sometimes you have all this commotion going on that I can block it out, but it only takes one thing and I'm like back in tune with what's going on around me. It's weird.
Yeah. Well, I think that's evolutionary wise, it's probably good. You're picking out strange sounds. You can get attuned to things that are normal. And then all of a sudden something strange you hear. Boy, that's a protective sort of thing. Your brain is saying, hey, watch out, be alert. There's something new in the environment. So Yeah, but I know what you mean. My wife, Karen, she usually gets up before I do in the morning and says, I don't want to go to work at 4:30. But she's getting up, and I can usually sleep right through everything she's doing, even hair dryers. But as soon as she does something like clink a pan in the kitchen or something, that wakes me up. Or she clinks,
Breakfast.
sometimes she'll clink her spoon on the coffee cup, and that wakes me up. But the hair dryer 15 feet away didn't.
Right.
So it's just the way it is, right? Okay, so audio or sonic? Those are typical, you know me, true, false, back questions, right? I want to give you something on that. This is more PBS than anything. I just want you to realize that the ears, the sound coming from one ear is interpreted in both temporal lobes. Not like the eye, where the whole visual field on the right goes to the left. Okay? So you can have a stroke and lose vision. Okay? But most strokes won't make you lose your hearing, because even if you knock out the left, both ears go to the right. Okay? So it's bilateral interpretation and communication. This just shows you some of the names of the pathways. And you can see it's going through the inferior colliculus here, where our auditory reflexes are formed. This is where we have connections to motor neurons that give us that jerk when we hear something, a loud bang. Okay? We turn our head towards it, and we have reflex and extensive reflexes. Okay? So that's the only point of this slide. Okay? Here's a normal eardrum. Actually, it's much better than normal. This is a very clean eardrum. You look at an ear, you're not usually going to see them quite this nice. Here's the malleus laying up against the tympanic membrane. Okay, Inca in the back. Okay. It's like wax paper. You can almost see through it. Okay. And this is normal here, just to see some of these striations in it like this. Nice pink lining around the external ear canal. So you're looking at with the otoscope. That's the name of the tool, the otoscope, okay, that you use. These are not so normal. This is something I saw a lot, middle ear infections. This is fluid buildup in the middle ear, where the ossicles are. Okay? So it causes a pressure, a fluid pressure that pushes the eardrum out. So you can see it bulging out instead of bulging in like it normally would. Okay, so here it's bulging out, pushed out by fluid. And this looks probably like a viral infection, because it's not dark and pussy back behind here, so this is probably a clear fluid from a virus or a cold, something like that. But you have to block the eustachian tube to get this look, because otherwise the fluid would drain out through the eustachian tube. Okay, so it's a typical sort of thing when you see a patient with a cold and complaining that their ears are blocked up.
And when they put tubes in children's ears, what are they actually doing? Putting
Right here.
insert? Oh, there it is. Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
I see it now.
Yeah, they just make a small little incision in the tympanic membrane, they slide in the tube, and it stays for as long as it stays. Sometimes it falls out within a few months, you gotta put it back in. But for chronic infections, you don't want it to keep scarring and damaging the eardrum and the ossicles. Okay, so you want to try to keep it clear, keep fluid out of the middle ear, so you put in tubes like this. And then when they go swimming, they gotta wear earplugs, because you don't want all that dirty water rushing into your ear either. Okay? So, but you can see how the scarring has affected the eardrum. Okay, it's no longer pretty, nice and pink.
So that affects the hearing?
Oh yeah. That's why you do that, so they don't lose their hearing. If you have an infection that is strong enough, you can actually cause a rupture in the eardrum and get a perforation like this. And kids who have, they'll be screaming all day long, all of a sudden, they don't scream anymore. Well, they just perforated it, now it doesn't hurt anymore, because it took all the strain off the eardrum. Okay, but some of these will close up on their own. You don't have to worry about most of them.
Is that why you'll see the kids with like the bloody earwax, you know?
Yeah, exactly. They've ruptured. And but if you have a big perforation or an injury, they've got to go in and put a little skin graft over that to get it to close up. But most of these holes like this will close up on their own when the tubes fall out. But this is the kind of thing you see when kids stick pencils in their ears and things like that too.
Can that happen if you stick a Q-tip too far in?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's probably not too good to be using Q-tips much anyway, because you're packing
Pushing
wax
it,
up against
yeah.
the eardrum. You're not
Pushing
getting
it
it all
in.
out of there. Most of it you're pushing it in.
What about Volonic peroxide?
Well, any kind of liquid flush or soap or whatever will help flush the wax out. But medical school, they said nothing smaller than your elbow in your ear.
Space rock.
There's a stuff you can buy called Cerumenex. Okay, that's sort of the waxy, solvent kind of thing that dissolves the wax and then you wash it out. So, this is an external ear infection. Okay, this is otitis externa. Otitis media is a middle ear infection. Okay, this is just infectious debris, bacterial stuff growing on the external ear canal, so you can't even see the eardrum. The eardrum is behind that. Okay. So this is what you see when you're looking at it with the scope. And this is probably bacterial in origin here. You can see that pussy kind of look. This is fungus in the ear. Looks just like a bread mold.
Wow.
You can see the hyphae, you can see the little spores. Okay. It's not too uncommon. That's why you have antifungal drops that you put in the ears.
Is it just people?
Is that from lake water?
Oh, no. It's just bad luck. Because these things are floating around. You're breathing these spores in right now.
Oh, wow.
These things are ubiquitous in the air. So they just float in and sit there.
People that are real susceptible, like fungus infections, will get that.
Yeah, sure. They would be worse. Yeah. But it feeds on the wax and things like that in the ear.
When my brother was a kid, he put an apple seed in his ear, and he finally started complaining about an earache. My parents took him to see the doctor, and they said it was pretty close to sprouting in his ear.
Yeah.
Oh my God!
I've seen that too.
Yeah.
I've seen that too. I've seen plants growing out of the ear. But even more often you find bugs, beetles, roaches, and beans.
Yeah.
Kids like to put, they'll put hard beans in their ears or their nose.
Yeah, my brother.
Pearl necklaces, they're playing with them, they break, they take one out. Yeah, let's put it in your ear. That sounds like a good use of time. So you'll find all kinds of stuff. And you have to dig it out. So, okay. This, don't worry about this. I'm just showing you that there's a connection between the cerebrospinal fluid and the fluid in those tubes. Okay? So if you have fractures through this area or perforations, you can get cerebrospinal fluid draining out your ear. Okay? Just like if you fracture the cribriform plate, you can get cerebrospinal fluid running out your nose. Okay? So that's a sign of a temporal petrous bone fracture if you see that after an injury. Okay?
So that'd be obviously an impact to the side of the head. And
Yeah.
Were you getting hit with a baseball?
Sure.
That happened?
Well, it'd have to be a pretty hard hit to fracture the temporal petrous bone. But yeah, I'm sure. Well, more likely to get hit with a bat. That happens.
Well, I'm just asking because like I come on my son's baseball team, he got hit right in the ear. I mean, he had the helmet on, but he got hit right in the ear the other night with a baseball with a pitch.
I know what it feels like. The worst thing I ever had in baseball, I had a line drive. I was a pitcher, varsity pitcher for high school. And I had a line drive hit right back at me. I had just thrown, and I didn't even have time to get the left glove up. So all I had to do was get my hand up in front of my face, and the ball hit me like this. And it was coming good. And my hand swelled up that big. It got black and blue all over my arm because it broke all the veins in my hand. And I think I already told you about getting my rib broke with a fastball. Wild curve. So that's the whole point there. Connected. All right. We have to define tinnitus. Ringing in the ears, basically, for no reason. Okay. When there's no external sound to cause it. Very common. A lot of people complain about it. I have it. Okay. I've got a very high frequency tinnitus. When I'm in a quiet room, I can hear it.
Yeah.
When I'm reading, I can hear it while I'm
When
reading.
I'm sleeping,
Yeah.
It's caused by various sort of things. I have no idea what earwax would cause it, but it's associated with it. Maybe it's some sort of autonomic pressure in the ear or something that's causing a different sensitivity. Or something. I don't really know. I'm guessing. Okay, but it is known to cause it. But many times it's just it comes on for no apparent reason and it stays with you. Okay, I've had it for years. When I was, and it can sound like anything. Mine sounds like a very high electronic whine, okay? Whereas people talk about crickets and waves and ocean roaring.
Is this a continual thing that you hear all the time?
Yeah, but
Never
think about it.
stops?
Yeah, yeah. Like when I'm talking to you, I'm sort of, it's just like I say, I'm not paying attention to it, but as soon as I remember I have it, I can hear it right now.
Right, right. So if you think about it.
And especially in a quiet room. When I turn off the TV at night and I'm trying to go to sleep, oh, there it is. The whooshing, and it can be low sounds too. It can be rumbling. It's just kind of any abnormal sound. That's tinnitus. Okay? I'm just going to talk to you about aspirin. Anybody who takes high-dose aspirin has a high likelihood of getting tinnitus. Okay? Before, back 30 years ago when I was in training, we didn't have Advil and all of the NSAIDs for arthritis, things like that. So people used to take high-dose aspirin, like 15 a day. Okay? And besides the stomach problems that it used to cause, they would get tinnitus in the ears, and then you had to back off on the dose to make tinnitus go away. So,
So it would go away.
with that case, yeah.
You know, you go to like the club or something like that, and the next day or that when you leave, your ears are ringing, that means you're just damaged, is
Yeah.
that true?
Usually, yeah, yeah. A lot of people think, I'd have to read the research to see if it's been tested, but I think a lot of the ENT guys say that some tinnitus is the sound of cells dying.
Oh.
Okay, so as they die, they fire. And so your little hair cells are dying, and that's why you get the ring.
What about when like your hearing goes out and then like just a few seconds later it comes back? Like it
Usually that's-
completely goes away and then it comes back.
Usually that's a pressure thing inside the middle ear.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just like your ear gets stopped up for a second, and the eardrum won't vibrate very well, and then it clears up. And
Is that caused by sinuses?
Not sinuses, because they're not connected, but it's a
So it's not
blockage of your
sinus
extension
pressure
tube
that
back
does
by
it?
your tonsils. Okay,
But
by
there's
your
times
adenoid.
that like my hearing will just go completely and then if I wait just a little bit it'll come back.
Well, I can kind of picture that. I've had episodes where just like all of a sudden, oop, the world seems really quiet, and then it comes back to normal. And I don't know what's causing that. Okay, I don't know what's causing that.
I think that's how it is in the, like as the day goes on, because in the morning, if you notice when you get in the car, and the radio is set the same way when you had it in the
Yeah, yeah.
afternoon, it's really loud.
Well, that's true, and that's the function of those muscles in the middle ear. Okay, they've been relaxed overnight, so they're not pulling on your eardrum anymore. And as you get involved with daily noises, they start to tense up, so you're hearing less and less that they're protecting you. But okay, for the same reason, you walk out of a club where it's been pounding away at you, and you can't hear out in the parking lot for a while.
Yeah.
You have to wait for those muscles to relax before you can hear normally again.
Why is children with ADD or ADHD, I don't know if it has to do anything with what we're talking about, but the noises are 10 times higher than they are, like,
You know,
it's just
I'm not, I can't give you an expert answer, but I would think it's not the ear mechanism, it's the processing in the brain. Right, they're just more
so
sensitive.
louder.
Yeah, yeah. Because they're not hearing noises any more loud than you are, okay, but they're processing it as more annoying and aggravating. Meniere's disease, don't worry about it, it's pathology, PBS, but it's something you may see, and it's not too uncommon, it's out there. This is an increased pressure in that scala media, okay, and so and because those are all connected with the crista and the cochlea, that middle canal is connected to the same fluid, you're going to get tinnitus and vertigo. Vertigo is the spinning, okay, and you get a progressive hearing loss until you go deaf. Okay?
Oh.
Almost every time I have somebody in my class who says, well, my mother has that or my aunt has that, so it's not that uncommon.
Wow.
Okay? So Meniere's disease is something you'll see. It's not curable as far as I know, because they've found something recently, but we used to give diuretics sometimes in hopes that it could decrease the fluid pressure inside the ear. But that may be something I'll have to check on and see if we can come up with something new. Presbycusis, age-related hearing loss. Presby meaning elder. Okay. Cusis comes from acoustic, same root. So the elder hearing loss. Okay. We call it sensory neural because it's part of the cochlea. You're not losing hearing because the ossicles are getting arthritis or the tympanic membrane is hardening up or anything like that. It has to do with the cochlea losing function. typically you lose high frequencies, and it starts like when you're 18.
Wow.
Okay? So I bet we'll do, like I said, we'll do a little hearing test here from about 20 up to 20,000 hertz. I bet there's nobody in this room that can hear 20,000. Most of you will probably drop out around 15, 16. Okay, I usually drop out around 11, and that's just hearing loss. And I certainly haven't grown up around inordinate loud noise.
How do hearing aids work?
Well, as the high frequencies drop off, and that's something I want you to remember, age-related is high frequencies first, okay? You work from the high frequency and work on down. By the time you get down in the range of 4,000 or 5,000, you start to have problems discriminating human voices, okay? And then what they do is give you hearing aids to amplify those higher frequencies, okay? So that it sounds normal.
So it's like hooking an amplifier?
Like a radio.
Yeah, it's like an amplifier.
See, I have a 91-year-old gentleman that comes in and he only wants me to wait on him, but he has one. And sometimes the people he needs to talk to, we put him on the phone, and the most common mistake they make is they talk louder, and then you can't hear him with his hearing aid. So he needs them to, it's like weird, you gotta change the volume to match him on the phone, and then tell them not to speak louder, but to speak slower, and he can hear everything.
Okay, interesting. Yeah.
It's weird.
They
but-
buzz. A lot of hearing aids will buzz.
Yeah, well, that's the sound, that's feedback.
I have one guy comes in every week, and all you can hear is just buzzing.
Yeah, he's just
and he
going,
can't hear a word.
I can't hear you.
My dad won't wear his because of that problem. So he's, like I said, he's around jets all his life. So he's like, what? Turn up the TV, I can't hear it. Dad, it's already blasting. Okay.
Well, some people just don't even lose their hearing with age.
Most people do.
My grandmother's
Well, not to the point that
93.
they need hearing aids.
Yeah. My grandmother's 93, and she probably hears as good as I do.
Wow.
It's
Well,
weird.
Like I say, I'm down to about 11,000, and I haven't noticed any change in my life at all. I hear music the same way.
Yeah.
It's the only thing I notice is that when you all ask a question, if you mumble, I'm like, what?
It's not clear, yeah.
It's not clear if it's real soft. But a normal volume voice, it feels normal to me. Or listening to music, listening to stereo, still feels normal, even though I can't hear above 11,000. So I don't feel like I'm missing anything.
Me either, but there's only certain times that somebody will say something and I won't understand it completely. And I'm thinking, am I that old?
Well, I am. And this is something.
I'm the same age.
You know what I thought as a remote?
This is what I want to show you. This is pretty PBS here, okay? But if you're ever in the intensive care and you see a neurologist or a neurosurgeon or somebody internist going in and taking a patient who's in a coma or had just been admitted with a head injury or something, they're unconscious or whatever, you see them grab the head and jerk it sideways and then jerk it the other way, and you're going, what the hell are they doing? They're going to hurt the patient. What they're doing is testing this reflex. And so what happens, if I'm looking at you, what normally should happen, if let's say I'm looking at you, and I want to turn my head and look away, it's like my eyes are going to lag behind the head. Okay? That's normal. That's normal. Okay? So what they want to see when they jerk the head, they jerk the head and then they want to see the eyes come around. Okay? If the eyes just follow the head, that means the brainstem's not working. Okay? That's called doll's eyes. It's like they're painted on. They don't move. Okay? So you want to see that movement, that little bit of delay. Okay? Just so you know.
Okay, you notice that? Okay, yeah, I noticed. We'll see the doctor working there.
Yeah, we'll do the eye on Thursday. Let's do a hearing test and I'll get you home in under an hour.
Thank you, ma'am.